Hello there. How are you tonight? Feeling a little restless? Mind buzzing like a Roman Senate on gossip day? Well, you've come to the right place. Tonight, we're diving into the gloriously dramatic, occasionally ridiculous, and surprisingly soothing tale of Cleopatra, Queen of Egypt, Empress of eyeliner, and certified expert in turning political chaos into romantic entanglements. Forget the textbooks. This is boring history, the kind that's soft, sleepy, and just absurd enough to lull you into dreams of golden thrones and ancient scandals. There will be sibling betrayals, seductive carpet deliveries, and enough royal drama to make your pillow blush. So fluff your blankets, silence your scrolls, and prepare to drift off as we begin our tale. Cleopatra, the seventh Cleopatra, was born in Alexandria, Egypt, city that smelled faintly of Pyrrhus, ambition, and royal perfume. Her family, the Ptolemies, were Greek rulers pretending to be Egyptian. They'd been doing this for centuries, mostly by wearing gold and ignoring local customs. Her father, Ptolemy the 12th, nicknamed Elites, meaning the flute player, was more interested in music than managing a kingdom. He played the flute badly, bribed Roman senators generously, and ruled Egypt like it was a chaotic talent show. Cleopatra's birth was probably celebrated with wine, gold, and at least one astrologer who misread the stars because he'd spilled date syrup on the chart. The baby with a brain. From the start, Cleopatra was different. While her siblings were busy throwing tantrums and plotting each other's downfall over breakfast, Cleopatra was learning languages. She eventually spoke 9 including Egyptian, which made her both impressive and suspicious. Her favorite game was pretend to be Pharaoh, which she played with alarming seriousness. Her doll collection included miniature scrolls, tiny thrones, and one unfortunate figurine named Little Octavian, which she occasionally threw into the fountain. Family Feud, Ancient Edition. The Ptolemaic family tree was less a tree and more a tangled mess of betrayal. Cleopatra had 2 brothers and a sister, all of whom would eventually try to dethrone, exile, or poison her. Birthday parties involved armed guards, and the royal cook kept a backup cake in case the first one was sabotaged. Her father, meanwhile, was busy being exiled, reinstated, and exiled again like a political boomerang. Cleopatra watched it all with wide eyes and a growing sense that survival would require more than good cheekbones. Cleopatra's siblings weren't exactly the let-s braid each other's hair type. There was Arsino ambitious, dramatic, and possibly allergic to sharing power. Then there were her brothers, Ptolemy the 13th and Ptolemy the 14th, both named after their dad. Both prone to tantrums, and both convinced they deserved the throne more than their sister. The Ptolemies had a tradition: marry your sibling, rule together. Then try to exile each other before dessert. Cleopatra was technically co-ruler with Ptolemy XIII, her younger brother. He was about 10 years old and had the political instincts of a confused pigeon. Breakfast with betrayal royal breakfasts were tense. Cleopatra preferred figs and philosophy. Ptolemy XIII preferred plotting and passive-aggressive toast. Arsinoe occasionally showed up just to glare and whisper things like, "Nice crown. Shame if something happened to it." The palace was filled with whispers. Servants tiptoed. Advisors switched sides mid-sentence. Cleopatra smiled politely, but kept one eye on the exit and the other on the poison tester. Throne Games, Ancient Edition. Eventually, things got messy. Ptolemy XIII's advisors convinced him that Cleopatra was too powerful, too clever, and too fond of eyeliner. He tried to push her out literally. Cleopatra was exiled from Alexandria and fled to the desert, probably muttering, "Typical." But Cleopatra wasn't done. She was gathering allies, sharpening her strategy, and preparing for a comeback that would involve carpets, emperors, and dramatic entrances. Cleopatra was stuck in exile. Her brother was ruling Alexandria like a moody toddler, and Rome had just sent Julius Caesar to sort things out. Caesar was powerful, ambitious, and probably tired of Egyptian politics before he even unpacked his sandals. Cleopatra knew she needed to make a bold move, so she did what any strategic queen would do. She had herself smuggled into the palace, rolled up inside a carpet. Yes, a literal carpet. Legend says she emerged from the bundle like a glamorous Geneid draped in silk, eyes lined with kohl, and charisma turned up to 11. Caesar was stunned. The guards were confused. The carpet guy probably needed a raise. Caesar meets Cleopatra. Julius Caesar was no stranger to drama, but Cleopatra was something else. She spoke his language Latin, matched his wit, and had a plan. She wanted her throne, back-end, maybe a little Roman backup to make it happen. Caesar agreed. Whether it was her charm, her strategy, or the sheer audacity of the carpet stunt, he sided with Cleopatra. Together, they ousted Ptolemy XIII, who fled and later drowned in the Nile. Not the best swimmer, apparently. Cleopatra was back on the throne, quarreling with her other brother, Ptolemy XIV, who was slightly less rebellious and slightly more confused. Queen, again with eyeliner and edge, Cleopatra's reign resumed, now with Roman support and a reputation for theatrical entrances. She ruled wisely, taxed cleverly, and kept her eyeliner sharp enough to cut through political nonsense. She was still young, still ambitious, and now romantically entangled with the most powerful man in Rome. And somewhere in the palace, a carpet sat quietly, wondering if it had just changed the course of history. After reclaiming her throne and charming Julius Caesar, Cleopatra did what any newly empowered queen might do. She packed her palace essentials gold, perfume, possibly a pet leopard, and sailed to Rome. She brought her son, Caesarion, allegedly Caesar's child, and a royal entourage that made Roman senators spit out their olives. Cleopatra didn't just visit Rome. She arrived. She wore Egyptian robes, spoke Greek and Latin, and made zero effort to blend in. Her presence was magnetic, her reputation already legendary. Romans react poorly. Rome was a city of rules, tradition, and mild xenophobia. Cleopatra was a walking contradiction, a foreign queen, a powerful woman, and a lover of their beloved Caesar. The senators whispered. The noble women stared. The poets scribbled furiously. Caesar, meanwhile, built a golden statue of Cleopatra in the Temple of Venus. Subtle, not really. The political fallout, immediate. Caesarion. The baby with a backstory, Cleopatra's son. Caesarion was a curly-haired toddler with a royal name and a very awkward paternity situation. Caesar never officially acknowledged him, but Cleopatra made sure everyone knew who the father was. The Romans didn't love this. Caesar already had an heir, his grandnephew, Octavian. Caesarion was a complication, a very cute, very inconvenient complication. Cleopatra's Roman reputation, despite the gossip, Cleopatra held her head high. She attended banquets, debated philosophers, and probably made half the city question their life choices. She wasn't just a guest, she was a statement. But Rome was a fickle place, and soon the tides would turn. It was a regular day in Rome until it wasn't. Julius Caesar walked into the Senate, expecting politics. What he got was a surprise stabbing party hosted by his closest friends. Cleopatra wasn't there, but the news reached her quickly. Caesar was dead. Rome was in chaos, and her golden statue in the Temple of Venus, probably getting side-eyed. She packed up her palace on go, scooped up Caesarion, and sailed back to Egypt grieving, calculating, and possibly muttering, typical Caesarion. The tiny heir nobody wanted back in Alexandria. Cleopatra declared Caesarion as Caesar's rightful heir. Rome, however, had other plans. Caesar's will named Octavian his grandnephew, his successor. Octavian was young, ambitious, and not thrilled about sharing the spotlight with a toddler who wore gold diapers. Cleopatra didn't care. She raised Caesarion as a prince, educated him in philosophy, and made sure his curls were always camera-ready or scroll-ready in this case. Cleopatra rules alone, sort of. With Caesar gone and her brothers mysteriously out of the picture, don't ask. Cleopatra ruled Egypt solo-ish. Caesarion was technically her co-ruler, but he was still learning how spoons worked. Cleopatra handled diplomacy, taxation, and eyeliner. She kept Egypt stable, Rome guessing, and her enemies slightly terrified. She was now a single mother, a sovereign queen, and a walking political statement. Mark Antony was one of Rome's top generals, brave, bold, and built like a marble statue with emotional baggage. After Caesar's death, Antony took charge of the eastern provinces and decided to summon Cleopatra for a little chat. Cleopatra naturally turned the chat into a full-blown spectacle. She sailed up the river in a golden barge, dressed as the goddess Isis, surrounded by musicians, dancers, and enough perfume to stun a small army. Antony was hooked before she even spoke. Love at first banquet, their first meeting, was less diplomacy, more dinner theater. Cleopatra served exotic dishes, told witty stories, and casually mentioned she spoke 9 languages. Antony responded by drinking too much and declaring her the most impressive woman he'd ever met. They became inseparable, laughing, feasting, and occasionally ruling empires between wine tastings. Rome raised its eyebrows. Egypt raised its goblets. Power couple, ancient edition, Cleopatra and Antony weren't just lovers, they were political partners. Together, they threw parties that lasted days and made historians sigh. They dressed as gods, hosted mock battles, and once formed a drinking club called the Inimitable Livers. Yes, really, it was love. It was strategy. It was slightly ridiculous. Cleopatra didn't do anything halfway. When she and Antony decided to tour Egypt, she transformed her royal barge into a floating palace. The sails were purple silk. The oars were silver. The crew wore matching outfits. Musicians played nonstop. Perfume wafted through the air. Birds sang on cue. It was less a boat and more a moving myth. Antony, who was used to Roman warships and grumpy sailors, was enchanted. He declared the Nile the most romantic river in the world. Cleopatra just smiled and handed him another goblet. Theatrics on water, every stop along the river was a performance. Cleopatra greeted villagers like a goddess descending from the clouds. Antony gave speeches that mostly involved shouting and flexing. They threw feasts on floating platforms, hosted poetry contests, and once staged a mock naval battle using fruit baskets and flamingo-shaped paddles. The people of Egypt adored them. Rome, however, was starting to worry. Love, luxury, and logistics. Behind the silken song, Cleopatra and Antony were strengthening their alliance. They discussed politics between banquets, planned military moves over breakfast, and occasionally remembered they were ruling empires. It was love, yes, but also strategy. Cleopatra knew how to charm a general. Antony knew how to follow a queen. And the Nile ever patient, carried them forward. Octavian was Caesar's grandnephew, heir, and walking ambition. He was young, clever, and had the emotional range of a marble bust. After Caesar's death, he rose, quickly gathering allies, winning battles, and glaring at anyone who mentioned Caesarion. He didn't like Cleopatra at all. She was foreign. She was romantically linked to Mark Antony, who was supposed to be Octavian's ally. Worst of all, she had better publicists, scrolls, statues, and slander. Octavian launched a propaganda war. He accused Cleopatra of seducing Antony, corrupting Roman values, and planning to take over the empire with her exotic charms and suspicious eyeliner. He distributed scrolls filled with dramatic accusations. He commissioned statues that made Antony look like a lovesick fool. He even claimed Cleopatra was using magic because, obviously, no woman could be that persuasive without sorcery. Rome ate it up. Senators gossiped. Poets rhymed. Merchants sold Cleopatra-themed soap. Antony caught in the middle. Antony, meanwhile, was still partying in Egypt. He sent Octavian angry letters. Octavian sent back sarcastic poems. Their alliance crumbled like a stale baklava. Cleopatra watched it all with a raised eyebrow and a backup plan. She knew Octavian wasn't just throwing shade. He was preparing for war. Cleopatra wasn't just a queen, she was a strategist with a flair for public relations. When Octavian's scrolls started circulating, she responded with her own. She commissioned flattering portraits, sponsored poets to write verses about her wisdom, and hosted public events where she looked radiant and regal and absolutely not like a scheming seductress. She even had statues made of herself as Isis, the goddess of motherhood and magic. Subtle, not really. Effective, absolutely. The donations of Alexandria. Then came the boldest move. Cleopatra and Antony held a grand ceremony called the Donations of Alexandria. They dressed like gods, stood on a golden platform, and handed out kingdoms like party favors. Caesarion was declared King of Kings. Cleopatra's other children got titles like Queen of Armenia and Lord of Libya. Antony smiled proudly. Cleopatra glowed. Rome, however, panicked. Octavian called it treason. Senators fainted. Merchants raised prices on Cleopatra-themed soap. Love and logistics behind the drama. Cleopatra and Antony were still very much in love, very much in trouble. Their alliance was strong, their children adorable, and their enemies multiplying. Cleopatra knew the image war was just the beginning. The real battle was coming, and she intended to look fabulous for it. It's 31 BCE. Cleopatra and Antony have gathered their ships near Actium, a little Greek promontory that's about to become very famous and very cursed. They've got a massive fleet, glittering sails, and a plan that mostly involves hope. Octavian gets bored and leaves. Spoiler, he doesn't. The breeze betrays. On the day of battle, the wind is not on their side. Cleopatra's ships, sleek and luxurious, struggle to maneuver. Octavian's fleet, led by Agrippa, a man with zero chill and excellent sea instincts, surrounds them like sharks at a buffet. Antony tries to rally the troops. Cleopatra tries to stay regal. The wind tries to ruin everything. Cleopatra's exit strategy. Then, in a move that historians still debate and bedtime listeners still gasp at, Cleopatra's ships suddenly turn and flee. Antony sees her sails disappearing into the horizon, and because love makes you do wild things, he abandons the battle and follows her. The rest of the fleet, confused, leaderless, defeated. Octavian wins. Agrippa gloats. Rome cheers. And Cleopatra and Antony sail away into a very awkward silence. Aftermath and regret back in Alexandria. The mood is grim. Cleopatra knows the tide has turned. Antony is devastated. But Cleopatra isn't done yet. She still has her palace, her pride, and a few tricks up her golden sleeve. Cleopatra retreats to her mausoleum, lavish, towering structure she's had built, not just for burial, but for battle. She fills it with treasure, guards, and dramatic lighting. It's part panic room, part palace, part don't mess with me message to Octavian. She sends word. If anyone tries to take her alive, she'll burn it all, including herself. Octavian blinks. Rome gulps. Cleopatra's spy games. Meanwhile, Cleopatra starts playing both sides. She sends envoys to Octavian, offering peace, flattery, and possibly a few bribes disguised as fruit baskets. She also spreads rumors that Antony is planning a comeback, that her navy is regrouping, that Caesarion is ready to rule. None of it is true. But Cleopatra knows that in politics, perception is power. Antony's collapse. Antony, hearing false reports that Cleopatra has died, falls into despair. He tries to take his own life, tragically, not quite successfully. He's brought to Cleopatra, wounded and broken. Their reunion is quiet, painful, and soaked in regret. They embrace one last time, surrounded by fading grandeur and the scent of burning incense. The stage is set. Cleopatra knows the end is near. Octavian is at the gates. Her allies are gone. Her empire is dust. But she still has her pride and her plan. She prepares for one final act, one that will echo through history, poetry, and bedtime stories forever. It's 30 BCE. Octavian has entered Alexandria. Antony is gone. Cleopatra is a prisoner in her own palace. She knows what's coming. A Roman parade, chains, humiliation. She refuses. Instead, she dresses in her finest robes, silk, gold, and defiance. She arranges her hair, her jewels, her legacy. Then, according to legend, she welcomes a venomous asp into her chamber, a serpent curled in a basket of figs. A final companion. She lets it bite her, quietly, elegantly, on her own terms. The aftermath, her handmaidens follow her into death. Octavian arrives too late. He finds Cleopatra lifeless, regal, untouched by Roman shame. He's impressed, maybe even a little haunted. He orders her buried with Antony, side by side. The last lovers of the ancient world reunited in silence. The legacy Cleopatra's death becomes myth. Poets romanticize it. Painters dramatize it. Historians debate it. Was it poison? A snake? A staged illusion? It doesn't matter. What matters is that Cleopatra chose her ending. She wrote her own final line, and it was unforgettable. After Cleopatra's death, Octavian, now Augustus, made sure Rome got the final word. He painted her as a temptress, a foreign threat, a woman who bewitched great men and nearly broke the empire. It was propaganda with flair, and it stuck. For centuries, Cleopatra was remembered not as a scholar or a strategist, but as a seductress in eyeliner. Spoiler, she was both. Cleopatra in art. Medieval painters gave her pale skin and medieval gowns. Renaissance artists added drama golden goblets, swooning handmaidens, snakes with suspiciously expressive eyebrows. In Shakespeare's hands, she became tragic and theatrical. In Hollywood's, she became Elizabeth Taylor. Each version added layers, some accurate, tase, some absurd, all unforgettable. The mystery of Caesarion. What happened to Cleopatra's son, Caesarion? The boy she called King of Kings. Most historians believe Octavian had him killed quietly, efficiently, and offstage. But legends say he escaped, that he fled to India, that he lived as a philosopher or a forgotten king. It's probably fiction. The legacy lives on today. Cleopatra is everywhere: books, movies, memes. She's a symbol of power, beauty, and complexity. She's the queen who ruled with charm and cunning, who defied empires, who chose her ending, and who, even in death, refused to be forgotten. In this version, the Battle of Actium goes differently. Storm scatters Octavian's fleet. Agrippa gets seasick. Cleopatra's ships glide through the chaos like swans in eyeliner. Antony leads a brilliant counterattack. Octavian retreats. Rome sulks. Cleopatra returns to Alexandria, triumphant, with Antony at her side, and Caesarion declared emperor of East and the world. according to Cleopatra. With Rome humbled, Cleopatra begins her reign as empress of a new Mediterranean order. Libraries flourish, trade booms. Astrology becomes a required subject in Roman schools. The Nile is declared a sacred international waterway. Cleopatra's face appears on coins from Spain to Syria, always with perfect cheekbones, science, silk, and sass. Cleopatra funds massive research projects on medicine, astronomy, and eyeliner durability. She establishes the Royal Academy of Sass, where diplomats are trained in wit, wardrobe, and strategic flattery. Antony retires early to write poetry and raise ducks. The future that might have been. By 10 CE, Cleopatra's empire launches the first papyrus-based postal system. By 50 CE, they're experimenting with steam-powered boats. By 100 CE, Alexandria is the cultural capital of the world. Rome, still salty, still wearing togas, still wondering how it all went so wrong. When Cleopatra died in 30 BCE, Octavian ordered her buried with Antony. But where? No ancient writer gives a precise location. No map marks the spot. No snake-shaped signpost says this way to drama. Her tomb vanished into history like a queen slipping behind a velvet curtain. The leading theory, Topoceres Magna. Some archaeologists believe Cleopatra was buried at Topoceres Magna, a temple west of Alexandria dedicated to Osiris. It's grand, it's mysterious. It's full of tunnels, chambers, and statues that look suspiciously regal. Excavations have revealed coins with her face, secret corridors, and a vibe that says VIP entrance only. But no definitive tomb. Yet, the clues and the hype. Over the years, explorers have chased Cleopatra's tomb like it's the historical Holy Grail. Some say it's underwater, lost to earthquakes and rising seas. Others think it's beneath modern Alexandria, hidden under pizza shops and traffic lights. A few believe it was destroyed, its treasures looted, its secrets scattered. And still, the search continues. The dream of discovery. Imagine it, a chamber lined with gold, papyrus scrolls still intact, a diadem resting beside a perfectly preserved wig. A mural of Cleopatra and Antony sailing into eternity. A final message etched in hieroglyphs. I chose my ending. Let history whisper, it may never be found. But the dream of it is enough to keep the story alive. In the early 1600s, William Shakespeare gave us Antony and Cleopatra play full of passion, poetry, and dramatic fainting. His Cleopatra is witty, wild, and wonderfully unpredictable. She flirts, fights, and dies with flair. Audiences swoon. Hollywood's queen. Fast forward to 1963. Elizabeth Taylor steps into Cleopatra's sandals in a film so extravagant it nearly bankrupted the studio. There were 65 costume changes, a golden barge, a love triangle that spilled off-screen. It wasn't historically accurate, but it was iconic. Cleopatra became a cinematic symbol of power, beauty, and budget overruns. Cleopatra, today. In modern media, Cleopatra pops up everywhere. Cartoons with Cobra sidekicks, novels that reimagine her as a time traveler, podcasts that debate her ancestry, politics and perfume choices, TikToks breaking down her skincare routine. Spoiler: honey, milk, and being royalty. She's a meme, a mood, a marketing moment, and still, somehow, a mystery. The brand that won't quit. Cleopatra's image-bold eyes, regal pose, mysterious smile has become shorthand for fierce female ruler. She's on makeup palettes, fashion runways, and motivational posters. She's been claimed by feminists, historians, astrologers, and Beyoncé fans. And through it all, her story keeps evolving, luminous and larger than life. Cleopatra's most famous beauty ritual: bathing in sour donkey milk. Yes, donkey milk. It's rich in alpha hydroxy acids, which exfoliate and soften the skin. She'd soak in it with rose petals, honey, and a dash of "I'm better than you." Modern dermatologists nod approvingly. Donkeys remain unimpressed. Oils, unguents, and aromatherapy. Her palace smelled divine thanks to frankincense for calming, myrrh for healing, lotus oil for seduction, and "I'm a goddess" vibes. She wore custom blends that lingered in the air like royal signatures. Even her scrolls probably smelled good. Kohl and the power of the eye. Cleopatra's eyeliner wasn't just fashion, it was function. She used kohl, made from galena, a lead-based mineral, to line her eyes dramatically. It protected against sun glare, warded off evil spirits, and made her stare feel like a royal decree. Bonus: it may have had antibacterial properties. So yes, her eyeliner was smarter than most politicians. Diet, sleep, and moonlight. Cleopatra's beauty wasn't just topically, was holistic. She ate grapes, figs, and barley. She slept on linen soaked in lavender. She believed in moonlight walks, gentle massages, and the occasional dramatic sigh. Her glow came from balance, ritual, and knowing exactly when to make an entrance. Cleopatra spoke at least 9 languages. She could charm Greek philosophers, Egyptian priests, Roman generals, and probably your uncle at a dinner party. She was the first Ptolemaic ruler to actually speak Egyptian. That alone won hearts and temples. Playing Rome like a lyre, Cleopatra didn't just seduce Caesar and Antony. She negotiated with them. She offered ships, grain, and loyalty, always with conditions. She knew Rome needed Egypt's wealth. She made sure Egypt got respect in return. Her alliances weren't romantic whims. They were strategic mergers. The art of the scroll, Cleopatra used propaganda like perfume subtle, lingering, and impossible to ignore. She commissioned flattering portraits. She staged public ceremonies that screamed divine ruler. She rewrote her image constantly. Goddess, mother, diplomat, queen. Octavian tried to smear her. She responded with gold statues and glowing poetry. Diplomacy with drama. Cleopatra once sailed into Tarsus to meet Antony on a golden barge. Dressed as Aphrodite, surrounded by musicians and scented breezes. It wasn't just flair, it was a message. I am not here to beg. I am here to reign. She understood optics centuries before Instagram. Born to Cleopatra and Julius Caesar, Caesarion was declared King of Kings before he could walk. He co-ruled Egypt with his mother. He wore miniature crowns. He was the living symbol of Cleopatra's ambitioning, Rome's anxiety. After Cleopatra's death, Caesarion tried to flee. Octavian caught him, and history quietly closed the scroll. The twins, Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene. Cleopatra and Mark Antony had twins named after the sun and moon, because subtlety was not their strong suit. Alexander Helios was given titles like King of Armenia and Lord of Parthia. Cleopatra Selene was crowned Queen of Cyrenaica. They were royal toddlers with diplomatic resumes. After their parents' deaths, Octavian took them to Rome. They were raised by his sister. Cleopatra Selene eventually married a North African king and ruled with grace. Alexander Helios. He vanished from history like a bedtime whisper. Ptolemy Philadelphus, the forgotten prince, the youngest child of Cleopatra and Antony. Ptolemy Philadelphus was given a kingdom on paper and a quiet life in reality. He was taken to Rome, raised in obscurity, and never heard from again. No scandals, no statues, just silence. The legacy of love. Cleopatra's children were born into palaces, crowned in ceremonies, and scattered by war. Some ruled, some disappeared. All carried pieces of her wit, her beauty, her burden. They were her hope, and history's heartbreak. Cleopatra's final act was theatrical. A snake, a silk robe, a tomb filled with treasure and tragedy. Rome said she died by asp bite. Poets said she died for love. Historians said she died for power. But Cleopatra, she died on her own terms, choosing myth over mercy. The Roman rewrite Octavian, soon to be Augustus, needed a villain. So he painted Cleopatra as a seductress who bewitched Antony, a foreign queen who threatened Roman virtue, a cautionary tale wrapped in eyeliner. He paraded her children through Rome. He erased her victories. He made her a footnote in his triumph. But myths don't stay buried. Cleopatra in pop culture. From scrolls to silver screens, Cleopatra re-emerged in Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra dramatic. Doomed, dazzling. Hollywood epics. Elizabeth Taylor's eyeliner budget alone could fund a small kingdom. Novels, operas, perfumes, and podcasts, each retelling her story with new sparkle. She became a feminist icon, a symbol of exotic power, a bedtime queen for dreamers like you, the real Cleopatra. More than a myth, she spoke 9 languages. She ruled for 2 decades. She navigated war, love, and politics with brilliance. She wasn't just beautiful, she was brilliant. Not just seductive, strategic, not just tragic, timeless. The bedtime crown. Cleopatra's legacy isn't just in history books. It's in every story told with flair. Every woman who dares to rule. Every dreamer who chooses drama over dullness. She wore her crown to the very end, and tonight she passes it to you. So sleep well, dear listener. Cleopatra's story may end here, but her myth lives on in lipstick, lullabies, and late-night legends. Thank you for dreaming with her. Good night.